Okay, so we're going to talk about Ung.no, a project we did this spring using Gatsby and Sanity. But first, who are we? So we come from a company called NoA Ignite, Norwegian tech and design agency, which is part of the North Alliance, which is a group of design, tech and advertising companies throughout Scandinavia. Gabby, you want to tell us who you are?
Sure. I'm a developer, been part of doing our Sanity Studio, and also the lead on our front end. Over to you.
Yeah, and I was, or I am, the solution architect in the project, and yeah, also spent a great deal of time customizing Sanity Studio and creating the workflows. So this talk is going to be mainly a demo of the system, but I'll start by giving some context to what this actually is. So the site is called Ung.no, which translates to young, and it's a portal aimed at Norwegian youth. And the site is run by the Norwegian Public Agency for Children, Youth and Family Affairs. So the site is only in Norwegian, but thanks to Google, I tried my best to show you a translated version. Yeah, please excuse some strange translations you see. So the site is fully static and fully powered by Sanity, and it's divided into 3 sections. So first, that's the one you're looking at right now, is the content section. So Ung.no aims to provide quality assured content within any topic a teenager might be interested in. And the site has about 2,000 articles and guides within topics such as education, friends and family, love, drugs, sexual education, and employment. The next section is the quiz and poll section. So the quizzes support the articles. When you have read an article, you have the option to take a quiz related to that article. And a low score will give you a list of recommended articles to increase your knowledge on the topic. And polls are used to gather insights from the visitors. For instance, during the COVID-19 lockdown in Norway, the Ministry of Health ran a poll on the site asking how teenagers coped with the lockdown. And the results were one of many tools politicians used in their decision-making. Okay, and the final and by far largest section of the site is the question and answer section. And this section contains about 700,000 questions from visitors with answers provided by a panel of experts. And the questions cover every topic a teenager might be interested in. And visitors have the option to ask new questions. And the panel answering is a mix of nurses, psychologists, teachers, lawyers, and other public officials. And they span the age from about 20 years old to the late 60s. The service itself is anonymous, and every question gets answered within a few days. So a typical question can look like this one: how to convince my mother to get a dog. And by looking at the answer, you can see that the teenager is being taken seriously, and that a well-balanced answer is given. But I suspect this answer wasn't quite the answer the teenager was hoping for. And another example is this one. In this case, the teenager has decided to take the drug ecstasy and ask how this can be done in a safe way. And it's important to know that almost every teenager in Norway knows about Ung.no. They know this is a site where they can find information they need, and they trust the information they get on this site. And the answer, it might seem quite controversial, and it's basically a recipe on how to take the drug in the safest possible way. But they know the teenager most likely is going to do this no matter what the answer is. So trying to persuade the teenager not to do this or advise contacting a drug abuse helpline will most likely lead to nothing, and perhaps drive the teenager to alternative information sources. So a final example. And this is darker and describes something that might be bickering, or it might be violence within the family. In this case, information about an alarm telephone for children is given. But there are other more severe cases where lives might be in danger. This can be abuse in the family, drug overdoses, or suicide notes. And in these cases, the panel has to act fast. But given the fact that the service is anonymous, they have almost no information about the user. However, we log the IP address of the visitor and the timestamp when the user checks for an answer. In Sanity Studio, we have created a custom component where you can notify Norwegian police. And when notified, the police can log into the system and see the logs and hopefully get enough information to identify the user. Okay, a few stats before we run the demo. So Norway is a small country inhabited by about 5 million people. And Ung.no gets about 1 million visitors each month, making this one of the larger Norwegian websites. About 8,000 questions is asked each month, and a panel of 260 editors working in Sanity Studio answer these. And the Sanity dataset itself contains about 700,000 documents. All right, now for the demo. So we will show you how the question and answer flow is working in Sanity Studio in addition to the user administration. So Gabby will act as a teenager asking a question and as an admin distributing the question to the correct people, which is me. And I will act as a responder asking that question. So right, let's do it.
Yes. I'm going to start by walking through how the studio looks as an administrator. As you can see here, you're able to update different kinds of information on the studio, fix or add articles, also the quiz and the polls that was mentioned during the presentation. We're going to focus a little bit more on user and then, of course, question and answer. As an administrator, I'm able to make sure that the responders with more access and administrators and such are able to do their work and has the right access. So if we're going to look at one of the responders, this is Tormod's user. Here I can update information about him. Some of the fields are visible to me, but not to his user. And what's most important is that I'm able to say which folders he gets access to so that he is able to answer questions that I distribute to one of these two folders. Moving on, let's look at the question and answers. Here I can see questions that has not been distributed to a folder yet. I can look at questions that are distributed but not answered. I can follow up on different kinds of tags that we might add to a question to make sure that those with higher priority gets answered and followed up quickly. You see the different colors where green indicates a question that is recently sent in, and it goes to orange and then to red, where red indicates a question hasn't been answered for more than a week, which is something we're trying to make sure that the users get the answers as soon as possible. I'm also able to follow up on different questions that has been answered and make sure that I can look back to history. I think that gives you a clear picture of how it looks as an administrator. And what I'm going to do now is we're going to start the actual demo. We're going to look at the life cycle of a question. So now putting on the hat of being a person who sends in a question. And as all master chefs, I have prepared. This is the question that I want, that I hope that we'll be able to answer within this demo.
I'll try my best.
So it gets sent in. And now you can see it here popped up as a question that hasn't been distributed yet. As an administrator, now I'm going to give it to a folder. I'm going to give it to the front-end frameworks, which I know that Tormod has access to. I'm also going to add like a tag. Let's make it prioritized. He has about 5 minutes to answer this question. Hope he'll make it.
Pressure.
So, over to Tormod.
Yeah, so on the right side, you see the studio for one of the responders. So the menu structure is completely different. And what I have access to is my profile. Take a look at that. We can see that I can still see most of the properties that an admin can see, but I only have write access to a few of those. For instance, the signature. If we go to the question and answer folder, I can see if I can find this question. So I'll go into the folders, and I see that in the front-end framework folder, there is one question, which is which is urgent. So I'll take a look at that one. So the normal workflow for one of the responders is supposed to read the question. And this is something related to webhooks and Next.js. I guess it's Sanity webhooks. I'm not sure this one belongs in the front-end framework folder. So I'm going to add a note and ask the admin to take a look at that. And yeah, I don't think this is a question for the front-end framework folder. Please, yeah, do something about that. So I'll add a note. And hopefully the admin will change that. Yeah, of course, it needs quality control. Forgot that one. Make sure it sees that.
Just making sure that I follow it up. So, going back to an administrator here, maybe I'm keeping track of how things develop. I can see that this one that has priority now has changed the icon. So I know that someone is wanting a quality check. Then I can enter it, and I can see that there are notes on this question. Let's see. Tormod doesn't think it belongs to front-end frameworks. I do agree with him on this one. This does not seem like a front-end frameworks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to update the folder here. I'm going to add it to the Sanity folder. Makes more sense. I'm going to remove the quality check, and I'm also going to be nice and send him a comment on this. Let's see. Like this. Happy that he caught my error here. So now I hope that he'll be able to answer it.
Yeah, so get back in the responder studio. I can now see that there's a new question in the Sanity folder, so I'll have a look at that one. And yeah, still urgent. Yeah, looks familiar, the question. Still the same question, but I'll check the notes. Maybe if something has happened here. And yeah, of course I was right. It belongs in the Sanity folder, and now it's there. So now I'm ready to start answering the question. So I'll go to the answer tab, and I've prepared an answer because I know this is probably something for the Grok-powered webhooks. Could probably solve this. So I'll add an answer with some information about the new webhooks, and I'll also add an article related to that topic. And I think we have a Grok-powered webhooks article, and I'll just make sure that it's the correct one with the preview. And finally, I'll add my signature to the question or to the answer. And now my work as a responder is done, and I can choose whether I want to publish this question to the website or just to the user asking the question. And in this case, I'll just answer to the user. And hopefully, Gabby as a teenager has gotten the answer she needs. So let's have a look at that.
Yeah. In this case, answering only to the user, I need to copy this code that I did receive when sending it in. and then I can go to check the answer. Here you can see that I received a nice related article as well, and I'm able to give feedback as well. Is it proper? Is it good? I did like this answer.
All right, and myself as a responder, of course, want to know whether I'm doing a good job. So I'll go back to the Sanity Studio and check my answered questions. And here I find this question that has gotten feedback with a thumbs up. And yeah, that means I managed to give a good answer.
I think so.
Yeah, and that concludes the demo. But I would like to add a few closing comments before we hand it over to you, Gab. So building a system this complex without a custom backend would be hard to do a few years back. Back then, you would have to manage infrastructure, databases, and scaling, not to mention all the work you would have to put into creating the admin UI for the 260 editors. But using Sanity and its building blocks made this easy. It gave us the tools we needed to ship real value for the client right from the start. And this was one of our first and, at that time, largest Sanity projects. And we were a team of 5 developers over a period of 6 months building the system, including the new Gatsby frontend, migration of the data from a legacy system, and Sanity Studio customization. And as a final comment, I know we all love working with cutting new technology, but in this case, working on a system giving a helping hand to teenagers was what really made this special. And that's it from us. Thank you.
Awesome. Amazing demo. I'm like, my jaw's to the floor. It's been great. And a lot of demo love in the chat as well. If you have been watching it or if you want to go check it out, it's really awesome. I had a couple of questions. So while you were presenting, you had the, hold on, I have it written down. You had the admin studio and the responder studio. And between the two, you had notes that were like, oh, this isn't for this folder, or this is great, thanks for this answer, or whatever. Do you find that any of the conversation leaves the studio, or do you try and keep all that conversation for between those two studios within those notes? Like, does the studio kind of satisfy the need for that communication?
That's a good question. We would like to keep it within the studio, that's for sure. And since the users of Sanity in this case, you have people working at a lot of different places, and they don't necessarily have any chat system or like Teams or Slack to communicate. So, and there is all this security policy stuff going on as well. So I think having this note function in Sanity really is helpful for that communication.
That was kind of like a follow-up question I had was like, is everyone in a Slack or is everyone, in a common place to chat? And so they're not, it sounds like. And so that's cool to hear that the notes feature is heavily used. Couple questions in the chat. What was it like to do that data migration?
How should I put that? The legacy system was, how do I put this in a delicate way? An old one, with maybe not a data structure that was easily converted to a structured system like Sanity. So it took a while managing to do that, that's for sure. And I think probably the portable text part of it was probably the biggest challenge in order to convert the HTML they had in the old system with a lot of custom HTML components in that as well, which made the mix really sort of messy. So yeah, it took a while to accomplish that.
But it's done? It's all like...
It's done,
migrated.
yeah.
Okay.
So it's all in Sanity now.
Some more questions. What was the most challenging part of implementing this workflow using Sanity, and are the notes separate documents?
Yeah, I can start by answering the notes. So we use a pattern, I think it's called a dot notation for the documents. So it's similar to the way drafts are stored in Sanity with the draft dot and the ID of the document. So we use the same pattern for the notes to keep them internal. Because we want to keep the Sanity dataset public in order to use the CDN functionality and just get it nice and snappy. So that's the reason, or that's the way we managed to sort of separate public data from private.
Got it.
Without setting the whole dataset private.
Got it.
And the most challenging, you wanna?
Yeah, what was the most challenging part of implementing this workflow?
I think it's more that we went for a path in this. You could have done it in different ways, which we know now in a way that, like, was this the optimal way? I don't think we have a clear answer on that. I think both ways work. But it was funny to learn. It was interesting.
Yeah. I got one thing.
Okay.
Since this is Gatsby, we're pulling data from Sanity when we build the solution. That worked quite nicely when we just had test data in the dataset. But once we migrated all those 700, I think we were above 1 million for a time. And the way the Gatsby plugin to Sanity works out of the box is that it takes the whole dataset and puts it into GraphQL, which really was challenging. So we actually had to fork the Gatsby plugin and rewrite that in order to make it take a filter where you could specify which document types you actually wanted to pull from the dataset when building the solution.
Got it. This is a lot of great work and a lot of like awesome things for the youths, for them to like come and ask questions and get them answered. And it's also organized. You know, it's not challenging for someone to come into this website and not know what to do. So great layout, great organization on the Sanity side of things. Did you start your studio having it organized like this, or has it morphed into this beautiful studio that you demoed?
It's well, we started with a prototype with what we thought the client wanted, our proposed solution to how they should solve their everyday work and workflows, which was, of course, totally wrong. So it was an evolution, sort of a studio over a period of the whole project in order to fine-tune all the steps they needed, all the workflows, just to get it right in order to solve or fit the way they actually work. So I guess it's ever evolving.
Well, it looks great. And it was fun to see the behind the scenes, the studio part of it, and to see how you all implemented those questions and the chat between the responders and the admin side. It's all so great. So thank you so much for demoing that and for speaking at our meetup. I think I've got all the questions answered from the chat.
Nice.
But yeah, thank you so much. And we'll see you all around.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.